we bring these numbers down and eventually crush this coronavirus? Much of the world is counting on vaccines, while some are also starting to develop anti-COVID drugs to save lives. Our country is taking part in a global trial for one of these medicines called Molnupiravir with the United States, Canada, and Japan. Joining us now is Dr. Joel Santiaguel, clinical investigator at the Quirino Memorial Medical Center in Quezon City. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. Please share with us, what can Molnupiravir do to treat currently sick COVID-19 patients with mild to moderate symptoms?
Okay, first of all, good evening. And with Molnupiravir, we are expecting that if it works well, we would expect that those patients who are infected would recover faster, because that's the mechanism of action of this drug, that it inserts itself into the virus and triggers multiple errors and catastrophic errors inside the virus that it would not be able to replicate, and eventually all of it would be eliminated, so that the symptoms and the infection would not progress, and that the patient would recover in a few days.
So is Molnupiravir, Doc, a capsule or is it injected?
It's orally taken, so it's a capsule. You take it twice a day, and you take it just for 5 days.
And 15 since May have already enrolled in the global trials here in the Philippines. And basically, after each result, you submitted to the pharmaceutical maker. What has been the result of some of these enrollees in the global trial so far, Doctor?
Okay. Unfortunately, we are also blinded. We don't know what was given to them. So this study, it's either active drug or placebo that is being given, and then the patients are given the medication, and then eventually their data is evaluated and combined together, and then the sponsor, the drug maker, will release the result after all of the data coming from worldwide would have been collected and analyzed.
Initially, Doctor, what have been some of the results?
Well, at least what we can say is that from the patients who had been enrolled in the Philippines, none of them deteriorated, or none of them had worsening of their symptoms. And that is what we expect. They would have a faster or quicker recovery period, and that it would be safe with no significant side effects with its intake.
And these 15 enrollees, Doctor, have they been vaccinated or were they unvaccinated when they had mild to moderate symptoms of the COVID-19?
Yes, all of these patients are unvaccinated because that's one of the requirements. So clinical trials are very strict. You would need to follow what the protocol requires. So in this study, the patients are either older or they have underlying comorbid conditions and they are not vaccinated, and that they are staying at home. So that would be the requirements, and as such, that is also the reason why it's not that easy to get patients for this clinical trial.
And how many more enrollees or volunteers do you need for the Philippine trials?
For the Philippines, we are trying to enroll an additional 20 patients, and this would be either coming to Quirino Memorial Medical Center or the Lung Center of the Philippines.
And is there a certain deadline that you have from its drug manufacturer, Merck, when you should be finishing these clinical trials?
Well, the global target is that enrollment should finish by the end of September. So that's why we're trying to get as many patients as we can.
And the big question now is, Doc, is Molnupiravir effective against the Delta and the other variants?
From its mechanism of action, we would expect that it would have that potential. Again, we still don't have sufficient data, but from the early results and from its mechanism of action, we would expect that it would work against the different variants.
Okay, so the Philippines has a deadline, end of September. You're still looking for 20 more enrollees. When will the drug manufacturer start collating all of the data, and when will they come out with the final result? So this could be distributed more widely and help more of our kababayans who are going through a lot, especially during this pandemic?
The target would be that by the end of September, we would have gotten all of the patients and then they would be analyzed, and that hopefully in 3 to 6 months, the data and the results of the study would be released, and that it would be finalized, and that the drug would be approved by the US FDA and the other regulatory authorities, and that eventually it would be approved in the Philippines and would be available in the market.
Are there other drugs, Doc, being tested for cure against COVID-19 apart from
Yes.
Molnupiravir?
Yes, there are a lot of other drugs, either repurposed drugs, so medications that are being used for other indications but are now being tried for COVID-19. And definitely there would be new molecules, new particles that are being developed. But again, these are still under clinical trials, and at this point, we can't really say whether or not this would proceed and push through to eventually getting marketed, or that the results and the data would not be that good that they would be scrapped. But intravenous, oral, a lot of different treatments are currently being tested for COVID-19.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for sharing your knowledge with us on Molnupiravir. Joel